Let's move into question number 2 from Mift in Meridian. And Mift in Meridian says, I am remodeling my home. I found out that my contractor is not licensed. His contract with me says he is licensed. Unfortunately, his work has been pretty shabby, and I have issues now with the city from his failure to pull permits. Can I sue him? When I told him that I learned he was not licensed, he said that he was immune from a lawsuit because he is not licensed. From Mift in Meridian.
Oh yeah, yeah, boy, I feel badly for Mift, but you know, one of the first things, if you're watching, you know, people who are watching this, the first thing you should do is always work with a licensed contractor, okay? Because there's a reason why probably he's not licensed. But yeah, MIF can definitely sue this contractor for failing to provide, you know, the work in accordance with whatever the contract says, and that's really important. You know, I always say I have to see the contract, right?
Right.
So I have to see what the contract actually says. I see quite a few home remodeling contracts. At least, you know, several times a month, I'm redoing people's construction contracts. And you'd be amazed what people fail to put in those contracts. But the law basically believes that, and it kind of has this standard that builders and licensed contractors need to perform work in what we call a workmanlike manner, which is customary. What is customary in the building and construction industry? You know, there's a standard, the minimum standard, okay, of good work. And so we'd have to see photos and see how badly this work really is. You know, it could be much more subjective with regards to MIF, but in general, she can definitely sue this contractor. And I believe the contractor, what she's restating, or however she restated that the contractor says he can't be sued because he's not licensed. That's not how it works. Actually, we've talked about this, I believe, in a couple of situations. The contractor can be sued, but the contractor can defend the action, but the contractor cannot bring his own action in our court system unless he's licensed. So let's just pretend for a minute that the contractor wasn't paid by MIF. He can't go to court and demand payment from MIF because MIF, just because MIF didn't pay him, because he's unlicensed or they're unlicensed.
He can't demand payment. He also can't place a lien. Is that correct?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So he couldn't put a contractor's lien
on
it. But what about the part of the question where she says his contract with me? So she signed a contract with me that states he's licensed. So he sold himself to her as a licensed contractor. Right. And this is, you know,
it's misleading. It's fraud.
Assuming that it's, that's what I'm gonna say. Like, he lied. Isn't that fraud? So that's like another strike against him.
Another count. That would be another count that we would, as attorneys, would use when we do a lawsuit. You know, he intentionally misled her. Now, here's the thing. We don't really know all the circumstances around it, and I hate to prejudge. You know, it sounds like, you know, from what she's saying, he defrauded her, right? Because he's saying, oh, I'm licensed. Well, what if he at the time was licensed and his license expired when he was done with the job? So you don't know the whole story.
Sure.
I'm not defending him. I'm just saying that there's always two sides to a story, sometimes three. Actually, most often there's three. And so there could be an argument. Let's say that was the issue. Let's say we did file an action and said, oh, you know, it's fraud. He didn't disclose that he wasn't licensed. He could come back and he could say, wait, I was licensed at the time that we did the contract. I forgot to send in a check to the state.
Sure.
Okay? Which, by the way, wouldn't help him either, because now he is held to a different standard, right? He's the builder or the contractor. He's licensed. He has a duty to do work in what we call a workmanlike manner.
Right.
Acceptable in the industry, okay, in the building and construction industry.
So what are some things that homeowners can do when they're hiring licensed contractors, or when they have the need to, instead of just taking that contractor's word, I am a licensed contractor.
Sure.
What pieces of documentation should a homeowner ask for, or can they look anything up in a database, like a Michigan database, etc.?
Sure.
What are some things that the homeowner can do to do their due diligence and not just take someone's word for it?
Well, first, I mean, it's a great question. Great follow-up question. The first thing is just go on the state's website, the licensing website. You can pull up their information. You'll find out right away if they're licensed or not. That's number one. Number two, of course, you should get references from people who know the builder or the contractor. You'd be shocked how many people just are. I mean, I understand, things are expensive and people are trying to cut corners, but this is how this kind of blends with real estate, right? Like here you do a remodeling job, or you do an addition, whatever it is, or you're building a house. When you cut corners and you do things without getting permits, or you do things without getting the proper contractors, it may save you money in the short run, but in the long run, I'll give you an example. I'll give you two examples. One, I had a client who had a kitchen burned down. This is several years ago, and the damage was extensive. It was more than the kitchen; it was pretty much half the house.
Okay.
So the insurance company denied the claim, and they denied the claim because the people had remodeled the kitchen, but they did not have anybody pull permits where permits were required. Now, I want you to know that the cause of the fire had nothing to do with the remodeling job. The fire was elsewhere. But the insurance company denied the claim, and they said, well, you know what? We only insure work that's performed by licensed contractors, work that was performed by unlicensed contractors. Therefore, we're not going to provide you and honor the claim. Okay, that's huge, right? So here in the short run, you think, oh, I'm redoing the kitchen. I'm going to cut corners. Even though you might not think you're cutting corners, you just think you're doing it for less expense, but it's not. They did sue, and they lost. Okay, that's number one. They sued the insurance company, they lost. So that is a big problem. The other one is when you go to sell a home, Blair, when you do work by unlicensed contractors, and there's items there that require permits, you cannot honestly do a seller's disclosure in good faith, because one of the questions on a home seller disclosure form in the state of Michigan says, have you done any work without a permit? And I have, we just prevailed in a case which is so bizarre, on a sunroom that was built over an entrance area to a septic field. I mean, just crazy stuff. Anyway, but this stuff happens, okay? And yeah, it's problematic, and the people were not licensed, but my client was the one who purchased the home from the former seller that had this work done, and they knew about it. We have checks. So, I mean, the bottom line is, it comes back to bite people. Just, even I like to save money. Who doesn't like to save money? But when I was a young man, I didn't know the difference until, as I started dabbling more in the law and started seeing all these cases. And now when I do work, it's all licensed contractors. So I feel bad for Miff, and it's a really good question. It's unfortunate that she had to ask it, or he had to ask it. I think the best way, I have many of these cases, the best thing to do is try to resolve it between the parties. It gets very expensive. The attorneys can be very helpful in trying to resolve an issue, because there's a law of diminishing return on these type of transactions. There's a set amount of damages that people have incurred. And the more things that are wrong, the more expensive it becomes litigating each and every issue. So it's better to try and get the parties to mediation and work it out, because in the end, we, the attorneys, end up making the money, and we eat into the damages. How did you think I got this really nice blue shirt to match this blue wall?
Exactly. He had a special designer,
Yeah.
and that's how he afforded it.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Miffed in Meridian, it sounds like you're dealing with someone who is a truth twister. So,
Ooh.
yes, he
We
is.
just gotta find, like, we gotta find Truth Twister in Traverse City.
Yeah, there we go. Truth twister in Traverse City. That'll be next week, folks.
Well, let's see.
Okay.